these bifuel liquid rocket motors. Hydrogen peroxide and similar oxidants making up these bifuel mixtures are somewhat dangerous to handle. Here some concentrated hydrogen peroxide is poured over textile material, which begins to burn almost immediately. In addition to the bifuel combination based on hydrogen peroxide, another most important combination is based on concentrated nitric acid. This picture shows two of these fuels igniting spontaneously when they come into contact with one another. One of them is concentrated nitric acid, and the other a specially developed mixture of chemicals known as amines. This is one of the Valter hydrogen peroxide assisted takeoff units used operationally during the war, the development of the earlier work just seen. Among other improvements, a parachute has now been added to recover the unit when jettisoned from the aircraft after use. When the fairings are removed, the unit is seen to be of compact design. Here is a section view of the assisted takeoff unit. The large spherical tank holds hydrogen peroxide. The smaller tank holds calcium permanganate, and these two are forced separately into the combustion chamber by means of compressed gas, led first through a pressure-reducing valve. They react spontaneously when they meet in the combustion chamber. All the operations necessary for using such an ATO unit are now reviewed. After collection, the unit is first filled with compressed air at 160 atmospheres pressure. The two rocket fuels used in this particular assisted takeoff unit are concentrated hydrogen peroxide and calcium permanganate solution. Here, the latter, also known as Z-Stoff, is being filled from a drum into 10 cans by means of a device which delivers the exact amount required for each assisted takeoff unit, 4.3 litres, into each can. This substance is not particularly dangerous, but the men are shown wearing protective clothing. Since two assisted takeoff units are being prepared for an aircraft, two of these filled cans are taken away. Here the permanganate solution is being filled into the ATO unit. Now the unit is brought up to be filled with concentrated hydrogen peroxide, which is run in from a special tank wagon after a measured amount, 96 litres, has first been pumped up into a reservoir. The men are again wearing protective clothing. This fuel is dangerous to handle, but if proper precautions and special equipment of this sort are used, the operation can be performed satisfactorily. The final operation is attachment of the parachute to the assisted takeoff unit. This is shown here, and the unit is now ready to be put on an aircraft. Here the unit is being wheeled up to a Heinkel 111 and one takeoff unit attached under each wing. The unit is lifted easily by 4 men from its special trolley. After attachment under the wing, the static cord to open the parachute, when it is subsequently jettisoned, is fixed. And finally, the unit is, so to speak, armed by opening the safety valve which previously shut off the high-pressure air. Now the aircraft takes off. The pilot switches on the takeoff units, causing a diaphragm in the air pipeline in the takeoff unit to break and allow compressed air to blow the fuel separately into the combustion chamber. When the aircraft is taken off, the rocket units are jettisoned and come down on a parachute for collection, to be used again. After collection, they are washed out by filling the tanks with water and blowing through with compressed air. In addition to using the assisted takeoff unit on land planes, it proved very useful in getting flying boats off the water. Here a rather larger takeoff unit is being ferried out to a Blohm & Voss 138 flying boat. This unit is a development of the one just seen and gives a thrust of 1,500 kilograms for 30 seconds, the filled weight of the unit being 483 kilograms. Here these units are shown attached, one under each wing, no parachutes being included in this kit. Here is the Blohm & Voss 138 flying boat taking off with the assistance of these rocket units. To give an impression of the value of assisted takeoff units, a takeoff with and without these rockets will now be shown. These tests were carried out on the same day and under the same sea and wind conditions in December 1940. This is the takeoff without rocket assistance. The all-up weight is 16.5 tons and the time taken to become airborne is 43 seconds. For comparison, here is the exactly similar takeoff with the same all-up weight using one of these large rocket units under each wing. It will be obvious that the takeoff is greatly facilitated. In fact, the time taken is only 16 seconds. Thus, German flying boats from 1940 were capable of taking off with large overloads of petrol and accordingly increased their range. Yet another interesting application of such rocket-assisted takeoff units is shown here. The large German transport glider, the Messerschmitt 321, is seen having two rocket units attached under each wing. Glider carries a tremendous load. For instance, two medium-sized tanks constitute a typical load. To take off such a heavy load on an unpowered glider, a towing operation with 3 Messerschmitt 110 twin-engined aircraft is undertaken. The cables to the aircraft are here being attacked. Here is this interesting takeoff. The rocket units can be seen in operation under each wing. And finally, the glider becomes airborne. It is then towed back over the airfield and the assisted takeoff units jettisoned to fall by parachute for collection and use again. The HS-293 radio-controlled rocket-propelled glider bomb was the first guided missile to be used operationally and was employed as an anti-shipping weapon from aircraft. Its use was made possible, among other things, by the development of the rocket motor. This diagram gives an idea of the method of attack employed. The aircraft generally approached the ship at an angle of 20 to 30 degrees to the ship's course, released the HS-293 at a range of 5 to 10 kilometers, flew on without deviation of course, and the bomb aimer guided the HS-293 by holding it in apparent coincidence with the target during the whole period of its drop. Here is the rocket motor employed on the HS-293. It is one of the simple Walter type, employing hydrogen peroxide and calcium permanganate, which are forced separately from their tanks into the combustion chamber by means of compressed gas. They react spontaneously when they meet. This is a cold unit and gives a thrust of 600 kilograms for approximately 10 seconds. The rocket motor is now taken to the HS-293, which is already installed on the aircraft, and clipped on beneath it by means of a simple 3-point fastening. This is actually an early version of the HS-293. Later versions dispensed with the retarding attachments on the wings, and also with the balance weight in the nose. These pictures demonstrate the remote control by radio of the elevator and ailerons, using the control stick to carry out these operations. Here is a bombing attack with the HS-293. These photographs are taken from an accompanying aircraft. As is seen, the rocket motor starts up just after the bomb has been dropped, increasing its speed and bringing it up again to about the level of the dropping aircraft. After 10 seconds operation, the rocket motor ceases to function, and the bomb continues on its track under guiding control from the bomb aimer in the aircraft, who follows it visually by watching the flare in the tail. Here is another practice bombing attack which demonstrates the in-line technique of control of the bomb. These photographs this time are taken from the bomb aimer's position in the parent aircraft, and it can be seen that an attempt is made to hold the bomb on a line running between the bomb aimer's eye and the white target building in the background. These pictures show the HS-294, the development of the HS-293, for attacking shipping below the waterline. This bomb employs two rocket motors of the same type as that used on the HS-293. The Germans were well aware of the possibilities of radio countermeasures being taken against radio-controlled bombs like the HS-293 and the HS-294, and developed a method of control utilizing a thin wire link between the aircraft and the missile during its fall to the target. These pictures show a wire-controlled HS-293 attached to a Heinkel 177 aircraft. Several miles of wire are of course necessary to maintain this contact, and a twin connection is needed to complete the circuit. As seen here, approximately half this length is contained in each of two bobbins, one attached to each wingtip of the HS-293, and the other half of the total length on two similar bobbins which remain attached to the aircraft. This type of wire control was not used operationally with the HS-293, but was considered a substantial advantage over radio-controlled, and was employed again later in the design of other guided missiles to be shown. The Messerschmitt 163 was the first rocket-propelled aircraft to be used operationally by any country. It was designed by the Germans as a short-range interceptor to operate on the lines shown in the diagram. An approaching bomber stream at a height of about 7 kilometers could be intercepted by the Messerschmitt 163, which was able to climb to this altitude and cover 22 kilometers over the ground by the time that the bomber stream traveled 20 kilometers. Here are the Messerschmitt 163A, the trainer version, and the 163B, the operational version. And here is a takeoff with the Messerschmitt 163A. This is chosen rather than the B to illustrate an attack, because the exhaust smoke is more easily visible. The B employed a more efficient motor of greater thrust, but its exhaust trail was scarcely visible. After a short horizontal flight, the Messerschmitt 163 now climbs to intercept. After reaching the necessary altitude, it flattens out, and in this case approaches a formation of flying fortresses. In the ensuing combat, the Germans show at least one fortress being shot down. After combat, the Me-163 has little or no fuel remaining and glides down to its airfield without power. During this period it is, of course, extremely vulnerable to enemy aircraft, and undoubtedly its short range and rapid fuel consumption is the reason why the 163 was not more successful when it was used operationally. Finally, the aircraft lands on a sprung skid and is eventually picked up by a specially constructed vehicle and towed away to be refueled. To give an idea of the procedure necessary in preparing a rocket aircraft using these fuels for a flight, the various operations which were carried out with the Messerschmitt 163 are now shown. First, a water test was carried out, with the main fuel tanks filled with water to test for possible leaks. This test is shown here. When this has been successfully completed, fueling with the two fuels separately is carried out. First of all, the Seestoff, that is a solution of hydrazine hydrate in methyl alcohol, is filled from a specially constructed tank wagon. The ground crew employed wear some protective clothing, although this particular fuel is not especially dangerous. The water jet plays on the ground underneath the aircraft to wash away any drops which might come through the overflow pipe. When the tank is full, the funnel and the gloves used by the operator are thoroughly washed with water before they can be used for the second fuel, since it will be remembered that the mixing of the two fuels in the combustion chamber causes the fuel's reaction, which is the basis of the rocket motor's operation. It is completed, the Seestoff tank wagon is driven away, and the second fuel, the concentrated hydrogen peroxide, known as T-Stoff, is brought up. These pictures will show that even though this hydrogen peroxide is dangerous to handle from the point of view that it sets fire to materials such as cloth and causes severe burns if it comes into contact with the skin, if a specially designed apparatus of this sort is used, it can be handled very successfully. As before, plenty of water is used to wash away remaining traces. When the aircraft is fuelled, a static test may be carried out as shown here. Since the aircraft is not flying, and therefore not cooled to the same extent, water is sprayed on the tail when the jet is shut off. The static test is not necessarily carried out after every flight. These then are the operations necessary to prepare such a rocket-propelled aircraft as the Messerschmitt 163 for flight. Finally, here is a picture of the rocket motor employed in the 163B being prepared separately for a static test. It weighs only 167.5 kilograms and gives a controllable thrust of 300 kilograms to 1500 kilograms for a period up to 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Although the Walter type of rocket motor was always employed in the ME-163 and gave a very satisfactory performance, the firm of BMW had for some time been developing a similar motor to use concentrated nitric acid as fuel instead of concentrated hydrogen peroxide. Here the motor is shown in operation, and it will be noticed that very satisfactory combustion is achieved. The BMW rocket works was very well equipped, and these pictures give an idea of the various apparatus and facilities employed when carrying out these static tests to obtain remote registration of thrust, fuel consumption, rate, temperature at various parts of the motor, etc. Finally, here are some pictures of the BMW works, showing concentrated nitric acid being filled from a tank wagon into static tanks, employed on the test stands. They indicate that suitably resistant materials had been developed by BMW. Of all German rocket developments, the A4 long-range rocket, popularly the V2, represents the greatest technical achievement. The fuels used were liquid oxygen and alcohol. The rocket was launched vertically, and as soon as full thrust is applied, it rises from the ground and then gradually turns over by means of automatic instruments controlling the rudders until it is pointing at an angle of approximately 45 degrees towards its target, when the rocket motor is cut off. The rocket then continues under its own inertia to its maximum altitude of about 56 miles.